Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanacha Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari.
Class on why we do the morning program. Chaitanya's coming back.
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat nashtaprayasta bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. Ya evam metam harimedhaso harihi katam subhadram kataniyamainaha Shinvita bhaktya shavayeta voshatim Janardano Shyashuhridi Prasidati. Ya evam metam Ya evam metam harimedaso hare. Katam subhadram kataniya maina. Shinvita bhaktya shavayeta voshatim. Janardano sya shuhridi prasidati. Evam metam hari medaso harehe. Katam subhadram kataniya maina. Shinvita bhaktya shavayeta voshatim. Janardano syashu hardi prasidati. Ya, one who, evam, thus, etam, this, harimeda saha, who destroys the material existence of the devotee, harehe, of the personality of Godhead, katam, narration, subhadram, auspicious, kataniya, worthy to narrate, Mayinaha, of the merciful by his internal potency. Shinvita, hears. Bhaktya, in devotion. Shavayeta, also allows others to hear. Va, either. Usatim, very pleasing. Janardanaha, the Lord. Asya, his. Ashu, very soon. Shridi, within the heart. Prasidati, becomes very pleased. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. If one hears and describes in a devotional service attitude this auspicious narration of Lord Bor, which is worthy of description, the Lord who is within the heart of everyone is very pleased. In his purport, in his various incarnations, the Lord appears, acts, and leaves behind him a narrative history which is as transcendental as he himself. Every one of us is fond of hearing some wonderful narration, but most stories are neither auspicious nor worth hearing because they are of the inferior quality of the material nature. Every living entity is of superior quality, spirit, soul, and nothing material can be auspicious for him. Intelligent persons should therefore hear personally and cause others to hear the descriptive narrations of the Lord's activities, for that will destroy the pangs of material existence. Out of his causeless mercy only, the Lord comes to this earth and leaves behind his merciful activities so that the devotees may derive transcendental benefit. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Turvyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Gurum Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Krishna Maharaj, thank you for coming. I feel like, who is that got killed by Balaram? I don't know, I'm not sure I should get up and pay obeisances or anything, but yeah, Rama Harshana Sutta. But anyways, Hare Krishna. We'll try to leave some time if you want to have anything to say. So, today's verse, ending almost the 13th chapter, we're hearing about Lord Bor. We hear about Lord Bor a few times in the Bhagavatam. And if one hears and describes in a devotional service attitude this auspicious narration of Lord Bor, which is worthy of description, the Lord, who is within the heart of everyone, is very pleased. And in the purport, Prabhupada starts it off. In his various incarnations, the Lord appears and acts and leaves behind him a narrative history which is as transcendental as he himself. As we hear in the Bhagavatam, Krishna has as many avatars as there are waves in the ocean. I heard Maharaj say the other day, now, like droplets of water, or however you want to count it, it's unlimited. If you want to count the droplets, then you can start counting the molecules. And Krishna would even have more than that. So Krishna has an incarnation in every species of life. There's how many million species of lives are there? Yeah, that's right, Jimmy. So that means he has 8,400,000 incarnations in different things. But actually, that's not all. He can take multiple incarnations. Why not? And especially over unlimited time, he can take unlimited incarnations in each of the millions of species. Prabhupada says in the purport of Adi Leela 434 that the Supreme Personality Godhead has incarnations which appear in all species of life, although this is inconceivable to the human brain. And the reason he explains why the Lord does that is that the Lord's pastimes are differentiated according to the appreciating capacity of the different types of bodies of the living entity. We understand the idea of transcendental evolution. Darwin was kind of seeing some sort of material evolution, and he put that along, but he got it wrong when he didn't factor anything about how God created everything, and a lot of modern scientists or atheists use that as a scientific excuse to dismiss God as the ultimate creator. Krishna is the ultimate seed-giving father and the cause of everything, and he is arranging all kinds of changes of bodies. And how the real way that it works is actually the soul evolves from a very lower consciousness type thing to higher and higher, till ultimately he comes into the human form, which then the Lord also makes his incarnation in different kind of bodies, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others have explained how like you could go through the Das Avatar, and it, like Prabhupada said that actually, Jayadev Goswami or Srila Vyasadeva could be given credit for the theory of evolution, because they've already presented that in the Bhagavatam and other works. You start out with the fish incarnation, something in the water, then it goes on, then turtle, amphibian, going on to land, then animals, then half man, half lion, then dwarf incarnation, and so on until you get the full-fledged human form. So Prabhupada says that the Supreme Lord bestows the most merciful benediction upon human society when he appears in his human form. The Lord appears as a fish, tortoise, boar, so on and so forth, to reciprocate the different appreciations of living entities in different stages of evolution. So the human form of life, as we know, is the highest form of evolution, or at least from the animals. And then we have, how many human forms of life are there? Yeah, that's right. Different kinds of demigods, different kinds of human life, and everything in between. All the way up to Lord Brahma, who is like the so-called most evolved type, being practically completely just composed of intelligence, which with the amount of intelligence that we have, we can not even really fathom that. So Krishna comes in his human form to give this highest mercy, what is that highest mercy? But what is, when we chant the holy names, what is like the goal? What is the fifth goal? Prema Purushartha Mahan, right? Prema is that goal. So he's coming, the highest thing is actually prema, is actually pure love. Other animals, they have some sort of degree of love, but ultimately humans are able to express that fully. Prabhupada says, adoration, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love are the 5 primary relationships with Krishna. The highest perfectional stage of the conjugal relationship, enriched by many sentiments, gives the maximum relishable mellow to the devotee. So this is the highest thing that Krishna, as Prabhupada said, the Lord appears, acts, and leaves behind him a narrative history which is transcendental as he himself. So Krishna has done this to bestow mercy upon all of us. And within the memory of everyone, then Krishna came again as Lord Chaitanya to kind of underscore the point and show us how it's done, and to himself relish it. So this is our great fortune. And Prabhupada then goes on to say that everyone likes to hear something wonderful. Like everyone loves the movie, most people love Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, or there's so many different novels and so many different genres that are being sold to people. But we hear from the acharyas, like Vyasadeva is telling how these words that aren't actually describing the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere, are considered to be a place of pilgrimage for crows. So Jimmy, have you ever seen crows congregate? The congregational chanting of crows, have you seen that? Once? Do you remember? Do you have a good memory? What were they? Where were they? They were over a carcass, exactly. Wow. I remember one time, and I was in India, and we went to the birthplace of Lord Nityananda. What is it called? Ekar Chakra Dham, that's right. And I was taking prasadam, and then when you're done with your prasadam there, it's nice that they just give you leaves usually. So everything's like eco-friendly. And then you just dump the leaves into the pile, and then after a while, the pile just becomes a big garbage dump that eventually gets decomposed. And because they're all leaves, it gets decomposed in like a year rather than styrofoam or whatever else that takes unlimited time practically. And so what I saw there was, I also saw the congregational chanting of the crows in a place of pilgrimage for the crows. It was just a big, trash dump. So that's it was prasadam. So they were getting the transcendental benefit from the eating the rotten remnants, transcendentally rotten remnants. But that's what the crows like that. So the swans, like there's a story in Upakanya Upadesh, which is Bhaktivedanta, Prabhupada's guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote, and in one of the stories he's talking, there's a bunch of, I think it's not crows, it's actually cranes, that they go and they see a swan that came from some wonderful place of pilgrimage, some wonderful crystal clean lake, and the crows the cranes are asking the swan, oh, so where do you come from? Oh, I come from Manasa Sarovar. It's like the most wonderful place. The water's so clean, and there's so many beautiful things to eat. So, oh yeah, what do you eat? Oh, we eat the fresh buds of the lotus flowers and all these delicious things. There's honey inside them, and that's how we enjoy. Like, what? So are there any slugs? Are there any really loud croaking frogs? Are there any disgusting clam shells or something like that they can ew, no, those aren't there. And then the cranes are all like, oh, that's not there, then that must be a terrible place. So this is the highlight when a devotee, their kind of attraction is not towards these trash-like things. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. Crows and cranes, they're considered birds in the mode of ignorance. Krishna says in the Gita, food in the mode of ignorance can be that of a decomposing body. So if that sounds good to you, then you've got quite a bit of ignorance in you. So crows like that. That's just what they like. Like similarly, like flies like to go to the open sore, whereas honeybees like to go to the sweet nectar of the flowers. And so they have opposite tendencies. The honeybees are considered the mode of goodness, whereas wasps, they're also kind of like crows. They're like the crow's version of bees. They're in mode of ignorance. They like to go to when you get trash and it's been sitting there for a long time, and then all the goo falls to the bottom, then it starts to ferment and creates this disgusting smelling alcohol stuff. That the wasps like that. That's their nectar. There's another story that's coming to my mind, that one time the devotees were in Malaysia or some place like that, and they were making a big feast with ghee, and all the neighbors in the apartment building were complaining, oh, what's that disgusting smell of ghee? But then these are the same people that their favorite condiment, or one of their things that they would do, is they would grab the dead carcasses of animals and let them sit in a place. And something, and then that's their marinade, that's their sauce they put on their prasadam. And so they think that what we're doing is disgusting, and we think that it's like the essay Prabhupada told them, who is crazy? So people have different mental attitudes, and based on that, that's how they see the reality. There's a saying in the Vedas, Atmavan manyate jagat, that you see the world according to your own perspective. So how the devotees see things is that they see these narrations not written about God, not talking about Krishna's pastimes, as disgusting, and for the most part they are. And so we have to be careful. If we hear these mundane sounds, all our senses are like different tape recorders. We're like a supercomputer. Where the soul is more powerful than the most powerful supercomputer there is. So it's constantly, everything that's coming in is being recorded as vasanas and samskaras, and different things are affecting us. So if we're hearing these different mundane sounds, then it's gonna get recorded somewhere, and eventually it's gonna lead to mundane activities. That's why in Arakabe Nitai Chand Karuna Hoibe, if you get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, what happens? So Vasana, what is it? Arakabe Nitai Chand Karune Hoibe Samsara Vasana Mora Kabe Tu Chahabe. All the vasanas that are keeping you in samsara, birth and death, all these vasanas, or impressions on the consciousness from whatever we've been perceiving, mainly hearing, and that will become tucha habe. Kabe tuche habe. Kabe means will become, tucha habe. Tucha means nothing. Kabe means when? Yeah, when will it happen? And tucha. So, ara kabe nitai chan karuna hoibe. When he will give me my mercy, his mercy, samsara vasana mora, my samsara vasanas when will they become kabe tucha habe? Okay, yeah, so that's like, when we actually get the mercy of the Guru, of Lord Nityananda, of the Vaishnavas, of hearing, then all these things become tucha, or useless. We don't care for them at all. Things like, what is the mundane? They're all about just enjoyment, as if they're God. Everyone wants to try to be their own God. They're Radha or they're Krishna, and their partner is Radha or Krishna, or whatever it is these days, and they have their own Goloka Dham, however pathetic it is, and they have their pastimes, however ridiculous they are, and suffering they are, and then they think that that's actually happiness, and they read volumes of things, and even though they're described in decorative language, or now with the modern age of taking photos, you can like Instagram or Twitter or whatever these different things are, you just see a photo of someone, but it's actually very fake. It's like they're trying to say oh, look at this is my pastimes that I'm having, I'm so happy, but most of the time it's just they're trying to show off, because in this material world there's no real happiness in what we're doing. There's only two kinds of real happiness. The first kind of happiness is meditating, all right, Jimmy, we're gonna go on a vacation, okay? So we're gonna you're gonna go to Hawaii, we're gonna surf, we're gonna go out and get a suntan, and we're gonna just have fun on the beach and eat at a good restaurant. All right, are you ready for that? Doesn't that sound good? You're yeah, sounds good, let's do it. And so we plan to do it, and then guess what? When we do it, the plane ride really sucks, and maybe something happened to our baggage, and we have all kinds of problems. We've spent all kinds of money. We get there, we get a big sunburn. We go to the restaurant. It wasn't as good as we thought it was going to be. Yeah, you get food poisoning. Some native robs you, and you get depressed. So that sucks. But then you get back to work the next week, and oh hey Jimmy, how was Hawaii? And you're oh man, did you see my pictures? It was so awesome. And so the happiness that you get from that is that you get the other kind of happiness is of relative comparison to other jivas. If all right, I may not be God and I didn't have a perfect time, but at least I had a better time than that guy. Anytime you see someone that's less than you, then it's that's happiness for their souls. So it's so sad but that's what it is. And so hearing, whatever we hear gives us these vasanas, so we have to be very careful. I remember one guru was saying, even if you hear we want to hear about Krishna's pastimes, but if we hear it from the lips of a serpent, then it becomes poisonous. If you drink milk that's been licked by a snake, apparently that milk becomes very bad. And there's a thing called a snake gourd, and sometimes snakes will go and try to eat that or try to touch that, and then if they do, it becomes completely bitter, ridiculously bitter and poisonous and bad. And so similarly, even if Krishna Katha is given by someone with an improper conception, because what we're really getting is the entire vibration coming from that person. It's not just the audio. The audio is not the most important thing. It's their entire vibration. Even if you don't understand the language, but the person is saying a good thing, if you listen to Prabhupada's Hindi lectures, Gopal Jambu was doing that because he wants to hear everything. It's still purifying. Punya Shravana Kirtana, we hear in the Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva tells us. So just hearing the vibration is purifying, because the person they have Krishna in their heart, and if they don't have Krishna in their heart, like me, at least they're repeating stuff they've heard from people who have Krishna in their heart. So you're still connecting with that vibration. It's Like they've done tests, like in how people's intentions can affect things, and they showed that your intentions can affect things across all space and time. So a pure devotee's pure intentions can affect things across all space and time. So what all we have to do is dovetail our intentions with the pure devotee's intentions, and eventually we'll be able to transcend all space and time. So therefore, if we hear even these, like they have these Mahabharata videos and different things like that, but if the person who directed it wasn't a devotee, or the actors themselves weren't necessarily devotees, then it could be a little dangerous, because they always try to change things to make it more pleasing to the crowd rather than more pleasing to Guru and Krishna. So we should hear about Krishna. Hearing about Krishna, Prabhupada is saying in the purport, they should hear the descriptive narrations of the Lord's activities, for that will destroy the pangs of material existence. So this is the Lord's mercy, is leaving His pastimes so we can hear about them, leaving His qualities and His names so that we can chant them. And Krishna is called Pavitram Paramam by Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and with reference to all Vedic authorities, that Krishna is the purest of the pure. So this is one reason why just simply coming in contact with Krishna, the name and the named are the same. Krishna and Krishna's name, Nam and Nami, are non-different due to Krishna's transcendental nature. This is what transcendental nature means. So similarly, His pastimes also, Nam, Rupa, Guna, Lila, all of these are transcendental, and we get in contact with Krishna. It's not like they did some test and someone was just saying some mundane sentence repetitive over and over again, and there was no change. And I would think if you just say Coca-Cola over and over again, like it's like a sadhana, then soon you would get mental health issues and so many things. But there's people that chant Mahamantra billions of times or millions of times, and they end up curing their depression, curing their mental health. They end up curing all their material problems. And so Krishna is purifying us. In the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's a nice thing that simply hearing about Krishna, like the Ganges, purifies the three worlds, the upper, middle, and lower worlds. So similarly, hearing about the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, about Krishna, three kinds of people are purified. The speaker, the preacher, and the people in general. And the preacher would be like he who's inquiring. So like if you're like thinking about the Bhagavatam, like who's speaking the Bhagavatam? Shukadeva. And who else? Who else is speaking the Bhagavatam? Sutta. And then who is the preacher, or otherwise he who inquires? Who is the speaker for the sages at Naimisharanya? Like Sutta Goswami is speaking, and then there's a sage that's asking him questions specifically. Shonaka Rishi, yeah. Yeah. So and then obviously Parikshit Maharaj with Shukadeva Goswami. And then the people in general who listen, then all the sages in Naimisharanya, or all the people assembled on the bank of the Ganges with Parikshit Maharaj, which was a lot. Like Narada Muni was there, Vyasa Dev was there. So this is the Lord's transcendental mercy, and the three types of varieties of people are purified by hearing the Pavitram Paramam, the purest of the pure, getting in contact with Him. So that's, if we hear about the Lord, that's how we get purified. Prabhupada said that if we hear from pure devotees, then we start to develop their qualities. And when we develop their qualities, that's when we desire the urge to hear. So hearing from a devotee is a service, or any kind of service we render. Shru shru sho shadadanasya vasudeva kataruchi. We want Vasudeva Kataruchi, because we want to get purified. We want to get out of this material world. We want these vasanas to do mundane sense enjoyment, to enjoy mundane popularity, or so on and so forth, get mystic powers. We want all these desires to be diminished in our heart, to get out. And so what do we need? We need to pour, if all this poison is in our glass, then we need to pour the heavy nectar of Krishna consciousness, of Vasudev Kata. But how do we get the ruchi for that? How do we get the taste for that? By Syat Mahan Sevaya, by service to the Mahats, by service to the devotees. This is the whole system that Prabhupada, when he made his prayer, when he docked finally in America and was just observing what was happening and what was going to happen, he described how the fallen conditioned souls would get purified, that after they do a little bit of service in here, then Krishna, who's in their heart, which that's what it's saying in this verse as well, Krishna is in the heart of everyone. He's very pleased when you hear nicely. And so it's hard to clean the heart, but it's easy for Krishna because he's the controller of everything. And what does he do? He gives Hari Medasa. So Hari Medasa can mean, Medasa means what? Like Su Medasa, that's a famous verse with Su Medasa. Intelligence, or brain substance. So when we have Hari Medasa, that means our brain substance is always connected with Hari, or Lord Krishna. But this is not, Prabhupada translates Hari Medasa in this as who destroys the material existence. So Hari can also be who takes away. So Krishna can give us the intelligence that we can extricate ourselves from material existence. And actually Krishna is really wonderful, because once we come in contact with Krishna, it's essentially guaranteed that eventually we'll make it. Krishna says in the Madhya Lila, chapter 22, that when you start contacting Krishna, then you start to do a little bit of service, then Krishna has this kind of thought process. This is the amazing thing about our transcendental literature, is that we can hear the transcendental psychology of God, which, I mean, some people, they don't even know what God looks like or what his name is or anything that he said, but we know what he thinks and what he feels. That's amazing revelation. So there's a famous verse in the Bhagavatam. I'm going to read it. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kamo dharadi tivrena bhakti yogena yajite purusham param. So whether you want something or nothing or everything and have all kinds of desires in between, or you even want to merge into the existence of the Lord in the Brahma Sadyuja, you should worship Krishna. So that verse is just saying you should just worship Krishna, because then he can actually fulfill all those. So the nice thing about Krishna, though, and this is the purport describing Krishna as Kaviraj, is saying, if those who desire material enjoyment or merging into the existence of the Absolute Truth engage in the Krishna's service, they'll immediately attain shelter at Krishna's lotus feet, although they did not ask for it. And this is because Krishna is very, very merciful. Like, even if you serve Krishna and you want Sayuja, Krishna will ultimately, he won't let you get that. He'll make you get the better thing. So this is Krishna's thought process. Are you ready to hear the transcendental psychology of God? So Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he's just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. Whenever Krishna is requested to fulfill one's desire, he does this, but he does not award anything which, after being enjoyed, will cause him to petition him again and again to fulfill further desires. So Krishna is extremely intelligent. This is in Madhya Lila, chapter 22. You can see it's like about chapter, starting around 30, 35 or 36. This is Madhya Lila. It has the verse from Bhagavatam in there. It's 35 through 45, around there. It's a whole section. It's many verses and good to read. So Krishna forcibly gives shelter at his lotus feet, where that one will forget all other desires. I lost my train of thought. I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. So Krishna is so intelligent that he can give us, somehow let us fulfill our so-called desire, but give us also simultaneously the realization how foolish we were to actually desire that. Like there's a famous verse given by Dhruva. It says all these pieces of glass, and I don't think that's actually in the Bhagavatam. That verse is somewhere else. Oh, here it is. Text 42, it tells us. This is from Hari Bhakti Sudodaya, which must be quoting from the Purana. I was performing severe types of penance and austerities, but now that I've gotten you, who are very difficult for the great demigods, saintly persons, and kings to attain, I realized I was searching after a piece of glass, but instead I found the most valuable jewel. Therefore, I'm so satisfied. I don't want to wish you I don't want to ask you for any benediction. So Dhruva Maharaj had this realization. He got this mercy, and this is Krishna's supreme mercy on the conditioned souls, that he gives them this supreme desire to attain him, and this is actually the Arakabe Nitai Chand. That when you get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, you have a desire that becomes so great it pushes out all the desires of everything else. So this is why we're trying to do all our sadhanas, to get this desire, this lobha, transcendental greed for serving Krishna. And when we have that, then everything else works itself out. All the anarthas go, and all the other changes and transformations in bhakti come from this. So it says wherever we find this, we'd be willing to pay any price, because this is actually what we're looking for, is intense greed to attain pure devotional service. And that's almost all I had to say about that. There's a little more I wanted to say about Varaha Dev, because this whole chapter is talking about him, so we can purify ourselves. So one thing is that we hear that Varaha Dev killed who, Jimmy? Who did he kill? Hiranyaksha. And Hiranyaksha is the son of who? Diti and Kasyapa. And so their son, Diti is the son of Daksha, or not the son, the daughter. Diti is the daughter of Daksha. And so Daksha, in Swayambhuva Manu, Daksha was one of the mind-born sons of Lord Brahma, one of the Prajapatis. But before he could really do much with propagating the population of the world, we'll hear in the Bhagavatam how this works out, but I'm just giving an overview. He gets messed up. He messed up and he gets messed up. When you mess up, you get messed up. That's how it works. And then it takes all the way till over 1 billion years later in Chakshusha Manu, and then he finally gets his stuff together and gets another birth and he tries a few times to have sons. The sons all get too fired up in brahmachari, and they become useless brahmacharis in the temple, as the modern society would see them. They become transcendental. But he gets mad. For him, they're useless because he wants to propagate children, and brahmacharis only propagate more brahmacharis. And so he has a smart idea to have women, because then the women they'll automatically propagate things. And generally, if you see, like if out of 1,000 men, maybe 1 or 10 men become brahmachari, it's like out of 10,000 or 100,000 women, only 1 or 10 of them become brahmacharini is not really a Sanskrit term, but there is, like Bhaktisiddhanta, you can look in the numbers of his disciples where he had like women who were permanently just renunciates. And you also see that in the history of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. There are some women that are permanent renunciates, but it's much less. So he had a much higher chance, and that was smart of him. He had 9 daughters, and one of them was Diti, and then we all know that how Diti did the Garbhadap samskar incorrectly, and then bore 2 wonderful personalities who made a lot of wonderful pastimes happen with the Lord. And so the understanding of this, like in the beginning of the class, I was saying the Lord appears in multiple times of each. Why just once in each type of species? He can appear unlimited times, and we hear in the Bhagavatam now from this that he appears twice, and we can hear from the commentaries in Brihat Bhagavatamrita and the commentaries by different devotees how once he appears first time, he's bluish color. We're hearing in this 13th chapter of the Bhagavatam, he's blue in color, but then we hear later he appears as white in color. So yeah. Those are 2 different born incarnations, one in the Swayambhuva Mano. Wow, then there's 3 different colors, because I can show you the verse where it says blue. So, or maybe somehow everything got changed. Yeah, I'll read it to you verbatim. I just read it. Here we go. Sometimes he is dark blue like a rain cloud, and this is from Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Sometimes he is dark blue like a rain cloud, and sometimes white like the moon. These are the 2 colors the scriptures attribute to that mighty personification of Vedic sacrifice. And then the purport. The Varaha of the Swayambhuva Manu is dark blue, and the other Varaha is white. So there may be also a red one as well. Yeah, so therefore, these things, they're not inconceivable. We just have to expand our perspective. That's what the acharyas, that's why we have to hold the hands of the acharyas, because from their expanded perspective, they can dovetail, or they can show us how all these things are not contradictory, but they're actually harmonious. But sometimes it's hard to see the harmony when you only see like small little details and they seemingly conflict. So we hear, I just wanted to read also this far out part. Where is the Lord? He appears here, but he's actually, it says, we'll read at the end of this chapter, or we already read. He returned to his own abode. That was what we read yesterday. You remember that in the verse? So he returned to his own abode. So where is his own abode? There's different places. One place, if you look in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, we can hear that one of his abodes was the island, the residents of Jamadweep, prayers by the residents of Jamadweep. So he's on one of the islands there, and that's in the 18th chapter. In the northern part of Jamadweep, in the tract of land known as Uttarakudu Varsha, Mother Earth, Bhumi Devi, is worshipping him with all the other inhabitants by chanting these Upanishadic mantras. And they're very beautiful mantras, and you could have a whole class on breaking them down, but I won't do that now. And that's one place he lives on Jamadweep. And then in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we hear another place he lives. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, 2nd canto, 3rd chapter. The first covering, this is Gopakumar, like he's going out of the material world. And so he went past Brahmaloka. So this is what do you know how the world is constituted, Jimmy? Like, there's like the earth, and then what's like outside of like Bhumandala, what's above that? Like if you keep going. Yeah, demigods and yeah, very good. Wow, amazing. Yeah. Yeah, and what do you know the order of the material coverings? Starts with earth. Does that help? Then water, fire, air, ether. Yeah, correct. Mind, yeah, the subtle cover. Mind. Yeah, and they're each successfully bigger. So when we hear this description of the universe, when I first heard that, I just thought it was just like a bunch of dirt or something like that. You just hear the earth covering is like million, it's like very gigantic. We hear about the islands of coming from Jambudweep, then the next island, they get bigger and bigger, and these like gigantic things, and then the covering of the universe is bigger, and then the next one is 10 times bigger, and it just keeps getting 10 times bigger until you have this big egg, which is like a tiny little dot in the middle. It's like our existence. Maharaj was explaining that, I remember, a few weeks or months ago. And so then Gopakumar is saying, the first covering I entered was that of the earth. And did he just see a bunch of dirt? No, he didn't. There I saw the Supreme Lord in the form of a great boar being worshipped by the goddess Earth, the deity presiding over that covering and its wealth. She worshipped him with riches not to be obtained within the universe itself, while all of the opulence of the universe whirled within every pore on his body. Now that sounds really far out. That's not just a bunch of dirt. They said that there's more opulence in that earthly covering than there is in the entire universe on the inside of that. So that was far out to hear. And now here's a commentary by Sanat Goswami, translated by Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu. Even when seeing Lord Mahapurusha on Brahmaloka, who is like the form that Lord Brahma prays to and they worship there, Gopakumar did not see all the opulences of the 14 worlds in every pore of the Lord's body as he was seeing them now. Each higher world is closer to spiritual perfection. So in each successive world, the Lord reveals more of his infinite glories. The presiding ruler of each higher planet is more elevated than the ruler of the planet below, and still more elevated are the presiding deities of the subtle coverings. So the goddess Earth in the subtle covering of the earth stands above Lord Brahma. Now put that in your notebook and write it down. That's pretty amazing. So, and then here's another thing that also is very good. So I will, just to recap, that as you go higher, like it says in the Brahma Samhita, what's that verse where it's talking about the different? That's one, but that wasn't the one I was thinking of. The different levels. I'm on the computer. I can find anything. Yeah. Devi Goloka Namni Nijadamni Chale Chatosya Devi Mahesha Haridami Shuteshu Teshu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vihitash Chayena Govindamani Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So Govinda has allotted respective authorities to rule these graded realms. So the idea is that all the realms in the entire universe are graded from the very lowest to like the very highest, which is Goloka. And so this is just giving us more details that in this covering, it's also gradually graded more. Like Goddess Bhumi is closer in relationship than Lord Brahma. And the opulences exhibited in this realm are more than what are exhibited in the experience of Lord Brahma's realm. So that's amazing. And now we're thinking, all right, he's seeing all the opulence of the 14 worlds. When do you want to stay there? After she finished worshiping the Lord, the goddess honored me as her guest and begged me to remain there to enjoy for a few days. Taking her leave, I quickly crossed beyond that covering as if pulled by some force, and I reached the other 6 coverings. So this is the common story in Gopakumar's, a common reoccurring theme in Gopakumar's story. Although the goddess Bhumi, a first-class Vaishnav, encouraged Gopakumar to stay longer in her domain, he couldn't wait, because the force of his sadhana was impelling him towards the abode of mukti. So that's what the Srila Sanat Goswami says, that if you do your sadhana is basically, ultimately we understand it, is cultivating a desire. Like I was saying, that greed. Once you get that greed, that's all you really have. And so once you have that greed, then nothing else can really push away that desire. Lord Bor is nice, but once you understand about the opulence of Lord Chaitanya and the opulence of Krishna and all the rasas that are exhibited in Vrindavan, then every other place, even though how nice it could be and amazing, and certainly, he was going through there. She honored him as her guest, so that means he probably ate a feast there, did something real quick, but then she asked him to stay for longer because he's an exalted Vaishnav and she's also a Vaishnav, so that whenever a Vaishnav has another Vaishnav come by, they always try to ask them to stay because Vaishnavas like to associate with other Vaishnavas. And so, but he couldn't stay there and do that because of the force of his sadhana. He already had an intense desire to go somewhere else. So with that, there's the balance of the time that I would like, if anyone, especially Maharaj, would have to criticize me or at least give some comment.
I'll criticize you? All right.
Please.
Because as he was talking about, he started off with the idea that, people are talking about different things. We were talking about the crows, and I still remember when I was in Pittsburgh. That's when our Chaitanya Nanda and Venkata Bhatt were going to Carnegie Mellon. They went to Carnegie Mellon, so we were
As students or?
programs there. And, there were, I saw lots and lots of crows around there. I forget who it was, but somebody said that these crows are like the academics there. These schools. And when they leave their body, they become crows and they caw on the tree. And I thought this was really appropriate, that
My God.
something like that. But there's another interesting thing that we have to be careful about what we talk about because we can get in trouble by that. There's a nice story in something called the Panchatantra.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a story of a talkative turtle. And so there was these many creatures, and they lived in a pond. But, the turtle was one of them. He was a water turtle and not a land turtle, so he lived in the pond. And he heard, one time he came upon two cranes, and the cranes were discussing. And they said, well, summer is coming. And so the sun is going to get hotter and hotter, and eventually this pond will dry up, and anything that stays behind in this pond will die, all the fish and everything. So the turtle was always eager to hear anything anybody had to say, and he had his own thing to say about it. So the turtle said, well, my dear friends, my dear cranes, so you are planning to leave this pond behind, but what about me? I will die because I will not have any way to maintain my life once the water is gone. So the cranes thought about it, and they said, well, we have a plan, but we know that you are very talkative, dear turtle. So please be careful and don't say anything about this plan when we execute it, because our plan is that we will take a stick and we will fly on either side and hold the stick in our mouths, and you can grab the middle of the stick with your mouth, and we will lift you off the ground, and we will fly you to another place where we know where there's going to be much more water and you won't die there. But during this time, you can't say anything, because if you say something, you'll let go of the stick and you'll fall. So they're flying, these two birds, these cranes are flying with the turtle in between, and people on the ground are looking up and say, what is that we see in the sky? It looks like some birds flying with a flag. No, it's not a flag. It looks like two cranes with a turtle flying between them. That seems very strange. And, the turtle heard this and said, what are they saying about me? And, of course, the minute that he opened his mouth, he fell to his death. So this story just highlights the idea that sometimes one needs to keep his mouth shut. And, that sometimes being too talkative is not not a good thing. So this was one of the stories in the Panchatantra.
So I was thinking, you were mentioning the story of Gopakumar, and in that section of the Briha Bhagavatamrita, it mentions how each one of the layers, the sense gratification is that much greater as you're going. And then it also
Maybe not
mentions
sense
how
gratification, but opulence.
yeah.
Yeah, I
But then
guess.
sense
Yeah, that's
gratification
probably,
is greater also.
that's,
So
yeah.
and then it mentions also that if we, as we're going through these coverings, if we become attached to one of the layers, then we
Yeah.
stay there.
Oh, please stay here for a few days.
So
Yeah, I
guess,
kind of like it here.
how do we cultivate that? How do we make our desire so intense that at the time that does come, that we don't get caught up in the earth, caught up in the fire, caught up in the water?
The thing that comes to mind is just when Lord Chaitanya is saying, like, whenever you find this lobha, you must beg, borrow, steal, somehow get it. Like, and it means when, we can only get it from someone who has it. When we hear from a devotee, and we hear about the qualities of a devotee, then we can get the quality of that devotee. So the pure devotees, they all have this intense lobha, especially the devotees in Vrindavan. That's the mood that we want. So if we're hearing about them, hearing from them in various ways, like Prabhupada is an eternal resident of Vrindavan, so we're hearing from him, we can ultimately get that desire. You can go somewhere. It's like, I remember going. It was one Christmas I went to visit my family, and they were like, "Oh, it's Christmas! Come on, we're all together. Let's do some family activity. Like, let's go see a movie." And I was like, I don't want to see a movie. And then they dragged me to it, and we ended up watching Star Wars. And like the whole time, it's like I'm just thinking like, oh man, this is like this is not good. And like, it was, it wasn't that good of a movie. But anytime you watch, go to a movie theater, it's like it's sense gratification. The big screen, you watch it with the big sound, and usually everyone gets candy. I don't know if I had some prasadam with me or something like that. I can't really remember, but. The entire time I'm thinking like I don't really want to be here. Like I'd rather be at home. I'd rather keep my consciousness cleansed so that when I'm chanting Hare Krishna, I won't be thinking of like the dialogue in the movie or something like that. And so similarly, then that was because of whatever little association I had that it wasn't like, okay, now let me just go see movies all the time. So similarly, if we get even more association, then any kind of sense gratification or anything that will distract us from our service will immediately, there'll be like a force coming from us, like he was saying, by his sadhana, the sadhana will just increase that force. Our sadhana is to cultivate that desire by like constantly hearing about it and various methods, all our other parts of sadhana, chanting our mantras and engaging in our service and being sincere and associating with devotees. All of these things will be able to give us that force to just be able to keep going, even though it's something nice. You want to keep going to get the better thing. That's what's coming to my mind.
So in the Bhagavatam it says that Lord Varaha appeared as in the red color and in the white color.
In the?
White color.
In the what?
In the Bhagavatam.
The Bhagavatam.
Yes, and in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita it says that he appeared as blue and then white. So which one is more authoritative? Like I know they're both authoritative.
Like I'm saying, and here in the Bhagavatam, it's also saying he assumed a bluish complexion like that of a tamal tree. And I'm looking for red. There's 16 things for red, and there's a lot of... Yeah, and this is also confirmed in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that, lost my train of thought. So the question is, there's two, we hear about different colors, and Maharaj was saying in response to that, that the different colors, it could be many different ones. So we also hear in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopakumar actually gets to Goloka, actually Krishna's pastimes, they're never, like we hear about them in the Bhagavatam, but he never does them exactly the same. Like they're generally the same. This demon will come, he'll kill it, this demon, that will come. But what the demon looks like sometimes is different. How Krishna kills him sometimes is different. Like sometimes he instead of just dancing on Kaliya, he'll take him and ride him. And instead of riding the horses in the chariot to the wrestling match, he'll ride on Kaliya to Mathura. And that's like one variation. And so like that, Krishna is like expert at completely variegating all his pastimes. And so it's, you know, he can come in an unlimited number of colors. And so if we hear about the different colors, the question we shouldn't be asking him is which is more authoritative, because according to the authorities, I guess the Bhagavatam is our highest authority, but the Bhagavatamrita is considered non-different than the Bhagavatam. Like the Bhagavatam, they're essentially on the same level, especially because our acharyas is giving it to us. Like Sanatana Goswami he's the one who's giving us the understanding of Bhagavatam through Bhagavatamrita, which is also itself, he's not just making it up. Like it's actually a revealed scripture as well. So that instead of thinking which one is more authoritative, we just think, oh, okay, so they're both authoritative, they're both correct, and if they seem, this is what I was trying to make the point in the lecture, if they seem contradictory, we should not see that like as in their actual contradictory. We should just see it, oh, from my current perspective, I can't see how both are true. Like if I show someone a square and I show someone a circle, then and I say these are the same thing, and you're like, how the heck are those the same thing? And then I show you, look at my program, and I show you it's actually a visual 3D editing program, and it's a cylinder. And I show you one point of view from the cylinder from the side, and one point of view from the cylinder from the top. And one is a square, one it looks like a circle. It was actually the same thing. So similarly, we don't know exactly the details, but like the acharyas are even, they're showing how there must have been two Varahas at least, and they give these different arguments like of dakshas, so on and so forth. And so to extend it even further would take some intelligence and some research, perhaps, if we want to figure out what's going on with this red Varaha, but ultimately it's not impossible that the Lord took even more incarnations than that. And that's what it says, the Lord's taking unlimited incarnations, so. Hari Om Tat.